These pictures, when you see them, they really are unbelievable. Recovering this morning out there from Hurricane Force Santa Ana winds that hammered areas from California all the way to Colorado.
This morning, hundreds of thousands are without power, damage in the millions, and the cleanup is just beginning. National correspondent Lew Cowan is in Pasadena. Lee, good morning.
Morning, Jeff. This is exactly why residents were told for a second straight night to stay indoors out of fears that the winds that toppled massive trees like this one would strike again. Well, the good news is that in some of the hardest hit areas like here in Pasadena, they were spared a second round. But still this morning, there are some 270,000 people without power.
Thousands across Southern California are waking up in the dark for a second day in a row after a storm brought winds powerful enough to do this.
I've never, ever seen anything like that.
The storm was one for the record books. Not since the late 90s have Santa Ana winds been this violent and done this much damage, whipping over the mountains and down through canyons at speeds clocked as high as 80 miles an hour, with gusts approaching the century mark.
We have nothing.
For Crystal Walters, it was a close call. Her home had withstood the storm for most of the night, but just before dawn, her neighbor's tree could stand no more and cut Crystal's house in half.
I thought it was the end of the world, to be honest with you. That's how horrible it felt.
The Crawford family didn't fare any better.
We kind of huddled into the house on the side of the house farthest away from the trees, and, fortunately, thank God, got through it.
The Mianas family didn't know what had happened. First, the power went out, and then they could see stars through their bedroom ceiling.
You could hear the roots literally rip out from the floor.
Electrical crews were scrambling to make repairs, but there were so many outages over such a vast distance, keeping up was tough at best. And California isn't alone. High winds were plaguing states all across the West, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah. Whoa! Where tractor trailers were blown over like toys. One gust outside of Salt Lake City reached more than 100 miles an hour. It's all the product of a very unusual weather pattern. Two pressure systems that have parked themselves in just the right spot, says KCBS chief meteorologist Josh Rubenstein.
So you have these two big features that are very close together, a high way up here and a low way down here, and you've got these winds that are just sort of funneling right through the west coast.
The biggest fear overnight remained the fire danger, especially in the mountains where the gusts had been the strongest.
When you get 60, 70, 80 mile an hour winds, if a fire were to get established, because the brush is still dry, even though we had some rain recently, it's going to be very difficult to stop. And once that fire gets established, it spots ahead with embers up to 2 miles ahead is possible.
Many of the hardest hit areas may have been spared a second round punch, but the cleanup from round one was still more than enough to handle.
Now, Jeff, despite those winds calming down a little bit overnight, a high wind advisory remains in effect, although the red flag warning has now been canceled, so that's good news on the fire front. The storm itself is going to stick around probably for the rest of the morning into this afternoon, we're told, until those high wind advisories are canceled. But then those same weather systems are going to start heading out in Midwest and could bring bad weather there sometime over the weekend. Jeff?
Yeah. All right, Lew Cowan, thank you very much.